A New York City Council employee who is detained by ICE and ordered to be deported to Venezuela has been released after spending more than 5 months in custody. Rafael Rubio Boorquez is a data analyst for the New York City Council. He was detained on January 12th during a routine asylum interview. Immigration officials said he overstayed his tourist visa and had a prior arrest for assault and had no legal right to be in the U.S. But City Council Speaker Julie Menin disputed that characterization, saying Rubio Boorquez had temporary protected status as a Venezuelan national, valid through October of this year. Then earlier this month, an immigration judge granted Rubio Boorquez asylum, releasing him from detention and allowing him to live and work in the U.S. indefinitely. And joining us now, New York City Council employee Rafael Rubio Boorquez and New York City Council Speaker Julie Menin. It's good to have you both with us.
Great to be here.
Rafael, I want to hear first the story about what it was like to be in detention, but back up to the day you were detained. You were, if I understand correctly, at a routine asylum interview in Bethpage, Long Island. Why were you at that asylum interview? Why were you there?
I had applied for my asylum, for my affirmative asylum, right after the purported termination of the Venezuelan TPS. So, as per my legal advisor's advice, I applied for asylum in an affirmative way. So they scheduled my appointment, and yeah.
So you were showing up at your appointment in order to continue with the process of being able
Correct.
to be here. You were paying an attorney. You were doing all the things that you could do to follow the rules?
Correct. That is exactly the case. I showed up for the asylum interview. We started to do the interview. Once we wrapped it up, the officer told me that I needed to turn off my cell phone, put it in my backpack, and proceed to the next room, in which there was an ICE agent waiting for me. He identified himself as an ICE agent, and he told me that he was there to take me into custody.
My God.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be reading this quote from Department of Homeland Security, but tell us about your time in detention. Where did you go? What did you do? What was it like?
Awful. I was first taken to OCJ, Orange County Jail, in Goshen, I believe it's Goshen, New York, upstate in New York. The conditions over there were like awful. More than a detention facility, it looks like an asylum, mental asylum facility. Staff were very rude. They don't have manners at all. They treat people like, I don't know, like garbage in general. And then I was taken or transferred to MDC, Brooklyn, which I believe is, I don't know which one is worst, but it's not a pleasant place to be, neither one of them. And then after Brooklyn, I was transferred to Newark, to Delaney Hall, to the famous Delaney Hall. I cannot say anything positive about those places. In general, they treat people like garbage. They don't have any empathy, and they don't try people like humans. If it's to say that, it's totally fair to say that. But well, my time in detention was awful, as I previously mentioned and described. You gotta make limes in order to get like water. They don't have microwaves. A lot of people doesn't enjoy the food. Of course, you're in a detention facility. You're not in a 4-star and a 5-star hotel, but at least the food has to be better. It was just edible. And a lot of people just don't want to eat that food, and they relied on the commissary, which is a small market that they have in where you can get stuff from. So, but in order to cook and whatnot, you gotta have access to the water, which they would just, they were just managing the water access like in a way that was inhuman. People only had access to water like 3 or 4 hours a day. So, for example, if you wanted to cook anything or to just drink water over the night, then you couldn't because it was restricted the access to it. It didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to anyone there. So,
I really appreciate your description of what happened in there and what it was like in there and what it is like in there for people being held now. The Department of Homeland Security released a statement about this nightmare, your case, Rafael. And it says, quote, on January 12th, 2026, ICE arrested Rafael Andres Rubio Boorquez, a criminal illegal alien from Venezuela, and an employee of New York City Council. His criminal history includes an arrest for assault. He had no work authorization, and his TPS had been terminated. Rubio entered the U.S. on a B-2 tourist visa in 2017 that required him to depart the U.S. By October 22nd, 2017, he overstayed his visa in violation of our laws. He was ordered released by an Obama-appointed activist judge on June 19th, 2026, on bond. He's additionally been enrolled in a TD for check-ins. We will do everything in our power to fight for the removal of this criminal illegal alien. He will receive full due process. Julie, why don't I go to you on this one?
Sure.
Is this a criminal illegal alien sitting next to you who should be immediately deported?
Absolutely not. And that's why this case was truly outrageous. When Rafael was first detained on January 12th, I immediately brought in NILAG to represent him, to file habeas. That is what kept him in New York State. That is what gave him access to the courts. We were intimately involved in Rafael's legal case throughout this whole process. He did not commit a crime. They kept using that falsely. He had been arrested for a fight with his roommate that his roommate punched him and initiated. There was no conviction. And so the statement from the Department of Homeland Security was patently false. I also want to mention that Rafael was put into solitary confinement for over 2 weeks while he was in detention. He was in horrific circumstances within his detention. We kept in touch with him throughout. About midway through the process, he brought in a private attorney. I became concerned that that attorney had missed vital paperwork, and I asked Rafael to remove that attorney and to bring in Bronx defenders. I couldn't be more thrilled that he is back home where he belongs. He's been a wonderful employee of the New York City Council. We're so excited to have him back home and for him to have permanent asylum.
Rafael, I saw you shaking your head as Mika read most of that statement, so I want to give you a chance to respond. DHS says you came on a B-2 tourist visa 2017 that required you to leave by October of that year. You overstayed your visa in violation of our laws. Is that true?
That's not accurate at all. Technically speaking, every asylum seeker that has applied for asylum, whether before their I-94 has expired or not, is currently in a pending status and is currently without a status. Technically speaking, is currently without a status. The ICE officers that detained me even mentioned that. He referenced that. He told me, well, you know that every asylum seeker is already out of a status because of the backlog. So they are conscious that it seems like this is all by design. Regardless of people filing for their asylum before the deadline, which is the 1 year deadline, for the backlog in the processing of those asylum cases, everybody falls out of a status at a certain point once the I-94 is terminated or expired.
One of the things we've heard during the presidential campaign throughout from President Trump is we're going to get the worst of the worst out. We're going to get rapists and murderers and all these people out, to which most Americans say, yes, please do. Those are very serious crimes. We don't want them here. What they cite for you is an arrest for assault, which doesn't fall under that category. Were you arrested for assault?
My impression at the moment when I was taken into custody that night is that I wasn't being arrested. Per my lawyer's advice, I cannot go into specifics without her input or her take in this. But I was pretty much told that night, we need you to come with us to the prisons so you can provide further detail on what happened. That was it. And then all of a sudden, they put the handcuffs off me, and I asked them, I had footage on me. I was able to capture the whole interaction with this person. It wasn't a fight. I was assaulted by this person, and I showed that footage to the police officer that showed up that night. And regardless of it, he decided to take me. He never told me that I was being arrested. They told me, we need you to come with us to the prison so you can provide further detail. I went over there, and all of a sudden, when they started to put the handcuffs off me, and I asked them, why am I being arrested? And they told me, no, this is just protocol.
And again, a fight with a roommate does not meet the bar of the worst of the worst, obviously.
Absolutely. The roommate assaulted him. They had a third roommate who provided a letter to the court who indicated that that roommate had assaulted Rafael, and he acted in self-defense. But the main point is he was never convicted, and it does not fall into one of the crimes that would constitute, but he was never convicted of the crime.
It's important to
and so it's a patently false statement for DHS to keep up that narrative.